Well, hello and welcome, everyone. Let me be the first to say hi. My name is Thomas Green. I am a technology manager in the Hydrogen Fuel Cell Technology Office in the Department of Energy and a co-chair of the Early Career Network of IPHE, the International Partnership for Hydrogen in the Economy. Today, we are hosting our first of a series of webinars on careers in hydrogen. Today, we hope to give some insights and lessons learned over decades of experience across all of our speakers in the world of hydrogen, and welcome you to this great international collaboration of the Early Career Network for hydrogen. We're hoping to connect people from all over the world as they are starting their careers in this really exciting field of clean hydrogen as we're helping to decarbonize all of the sectors in all of our respective countries. We're going to kick things off by welcoming the director of the Hydrogen Office. But before we do that, if you would drop in the chat your country and your academic background or your current role where you might go to might work or be in school. It'd be great to see where people are coming from and the backgrounds that you have, because just like all of our speakers, we come from very different experiences and places in the world. So please drop that in the chat. And without further ado, I'm going to welcome Sunita, Dr. Sunita Satyapal. She is the director of DOE's Hydrogen Fuel Cell Technology Office and coordinates the hydrogen activities across all of the Department of Energy. We are currently underway of deploying over $9.5 billion in hydrogen activities. And she has taken a key role in coordinating international collaboration in hydrogen and is a champion of this early career network. And we would certainly not be here at all, or here today in particular, without her vision and leadership. So without further ado, pass it off to Dr. Satyapal.
Thank you so much, Thomas, and everyone, welcome to the Early Career Network webinar. So this is under IPHE, and a big congratulations really to the whole team here. It's great to see. I just heard that we had over 460 registered. And so basically, for me personally, after the decades in this field and governments and industry, this is the most critical time, I think, in history. And so I want to emphasize the importance, the urgency, and the importance of collaboration. So this is just a great example of how IPHE and our international partnerships, we have so many of them now. IEA for many years. IPHE was formed in 2003, and we have Mission Innovation, Clean Energy Ministerial, Hydrogen Energy Ministerial, the Breakthrough Agenda, looking at mapping and collaborating, coordinating all the initiatives. So again, the urgency, the importance of this global network is critical. And after so many decades, it really strikes me that in 27 years from now, it will be 2050. And so again, time is moving quickly. So we have to address our climate crisis, energy security, resiliency. We've just come out of a global pandemic. We have the war, horrific war going on. So again, it's really all hands on deck. And this is such a huge challenge before us, but countries are recognizing the importance of hydrogen to meet their climate goals. In the US, with the Biden administration, we have net zero by 2050, very ambitious interim goals. As Thomas said, we have unprecedented levels of funding, and hydrogen is an important piece of that overall portfolio to address especially those hard to decarbonize sectors. And so going back to the purpose today is really to help promote international awareness. The Early Career Network, which was launched under the auspices of IPHE, which has over 22 countries, the European Commission collaborating, really helping to accelerate the transition to hydrogen is key. So this is just one way. We are helping to connect members. Again, it's entirely run by early career professionals students, postdocs, recent graduates. So a shout out and thank you to the new chair. So it's only a couple years old. And so we have Gaurav and Manan from India, who are with the time zones not here at the moment. Tomas, who is a vice chair from USD. He was one of the very first hydrogen shot fellows and now transitioned to a federal position in government, which is great to see. Asha-Dee, also here, great to see. You'll hear more from her. And then also Tim Karlsson, I want to especially recognize, who just transitioned from being the executive director for the IPHE Secretariat. So again, you'll hear backgrounds across the generations in terms of hydrogen. So this group really provides the collaborative platform for the next generation of leaders in hydrogen fuel cells, ranging from research to policymakers. And so again, thank you for joining. And this is just, one way. Hydrogen is element number one, representing unity, very appropriate in bringing together the next generation of leaders. And you'll also hear from our other newest vice chair closing remarks, a little more detail on how you can get involved from Suki, who is originally from Korea, but doing her graduate studies in France. So it's very global here. And the main message, I always use this quote, is no one person can whistle a symphony, really takes the whole orchestra. So now more than ever, we need all
I think we might have lost Sunita.
Excuse me, I was muted. I think we might have, and I just think her last thought there was that we do need all hands on deck to get clean hydrogen off the ground. And so next we'll have a panel of industry experts who come and work on hydrogen in different ways and come from very different walks of life. So we will give each a chance to introduce themselves and give the kind of long arc background of where they come from and how they found their way in working on hydrogen in this moment in time. Now we're going to start with Luisa Boll. Luisa is a program manager for the International Partnership for it's NOW is an acronym different in English and German letter-wise. But Luisa manages and builds both multilateral and bilateral German hydrogen collaborations with countries outside of Europe and within. She participates in the work of multilateral initiatives with a focus on hydrogen, fuel cells, and e-mobility on behalf of the German federal government. She's worked all across the world, and she joins us today from Germany. Hi, Luisa, and it would be great to get some more of your background.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Good morning, good evening to everyone. As you've heard, I'm Luisa. And yeah, I feel super excited to have a chat with you here today. Thanks to all of you for joining. And yeah, I suppose what unites us is our ambition to get down greenhouse gas emissions in our economies and to steer our careers towards their goal. Most of you are just starting that journey, similar to me a little while ago. But from here on, you might be working in this field for most of your lives. That's really exciting. Tim, Asha-Dee, I, and the others might be working in this field with you, maybe meeting you at conferences, summits, or maybe even as colleagues in our own teams and our organizations. So make sure that you approach us and let us know that you attended in this webinar today at the next in-person hydrogen event that we might be bumping into each other. So yeah, as Thomas just mentioned, I work in the international team at NOW, which is the National Organization Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technology, terribly long name. But at NOW, we support the German ministries on all things hydrogen, with a special focus on transport applications. So what does that mean? Germany is committed to decarbonize its transport sector amongst other sectors. So there we have heavy-duty trucks, forklifts, ships, aviation, where we at NOW see fuel cells and hydrogen as part of the solution to clean that sector from greenhouse gas emissions. So the German government provides funding programs for research and development, as well for initiatives that help activate the market, and we at NOW support them. So we've got a very interdisciplinary team of engineers, economists, political science, and others, and most of them work on national issues. And we're also a rather young team, with most colleagues being around my age. Our international team, including myself, works together with other countries to enable the build-up of a clean hydrogen economy. So think just, for example, that in the medium term, Australia wants to export hydrogen at big scale to Europe. And there are like lots of issues around regulations, safety, standards, and many more aspects that countries need to agree upon. And countries also collaborate as part of research institutes on projects together. So yeah, governments can learn a lot from each other. And there are obviously also many jobs in these areas where we need smart minds like yours. I personally consider myself a bit as a kind of German hydrogen diplomat in my role for countries outside of Europe. So I work closely with the US, Japan, Australia, but also South Africa and with countries from Latin America on those issues. So both bilaterally, that means Germany and another country, but also on the multilateral level, so formats like the IPHE. But maybe to start where you are at now, or some of you, so I did a bachelor's degree in social science and then a master's in international relations. And within my master's, I took as many courses as possible on climate and energy-related issues, policies, amongst others. And that way I learned about existing institutions, regimes, terms and definitions, market mechanisms, environmental economics. But I actually didn't have a single course on hydrogen. And still, all courses were relevant for my current role, just to understand the playing field, the ecosystem of environmental economics and politics. And then I obviously ran through a very steep learning curve over the course of the last 1.5 years at NOW regarding hydrogen specifically, which basically means I had to learn a lot of things from scratch. But I had a kind of rough framework that I could put this new knowledge into through my previous experiences. I also worked aside of my master's at an international research institute. This helped me to just stay connected to working on kind of real life projects and grow my network in Berlin. And then between my bachelor's and a master's, I actually spent 3.5 years working in Australia. So first I did an internship for the Climate Disclosure Project, analyzed data around carbon emissions of big companies. And that knowledge of analyzing greenhouse gas emissions, I can now apply to the field of assessing the greenhouse gas emissions associated with the production of hydrogen. I also worked full-time in a policy think tank on green finance as a communications officer. And in that role, I actually, kind of acquired two extremely skills. So first, I really learned a lot about the issues that the think tank worked on around climate policies. But I also learned about kind of the diverse actors landscape that help create and implement policy. So namely researchers, policymakers, NGOs in the private sector, and appreciating how all these actors groups are highly relevant, understanding their particular interests, finding the overlap of their interests and addressing them in a way that makes them listen and build trust to then cooperate are all skills that are extremely relevant for my current role. And then lastly, I've always enjoyed the process of looking for mentors, so which sometimes just meant approaching some people cold on LinkedIn or through networks, or taking part in a formalized mentorship program. And I've always been curious about finding diverse sources to learn. So for hydrogen, that's listening to podcasts, like industry podcasts, watching YouTube videos on the topic, asking experts for coffee and going to network events. But yeah, so that's all for me about me for the moment. So really looking forward to the Q&A and handing over to Asha-Dee next. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luisa. That was perfect. Next up is my esteemed colleague, Asha-Dee, who is currently an ORISE fellow at the U.S. Department of Energy. There she is focused primarily on hydrogen storage, delivery, and infrastructure technologies. She also works as the co-chair of the Working Group for Hydrogen within the U.S.-Germany Climate and Energy Partnership, CEP. Before HFTO, Dr. Celestine was in various roles in academia and research. Asha-Dee, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Thomas. And hopefully you can hear me. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. And so I'll try to make this quick. As Thomas said, I've had a lot of different roles in science and engineering. I'm currently an ORISE fellow, which is the Oak Ridge Institute for Science and Education. I joined the office in 2020. And so I've been working on hydrogen delivery and storage. And so my path to hydrogen has definitely been nonlinear, very winding. And it actually began many, many years ago with a dream to become an aerospace engineer, believe it or not. And so along the way to where I am now, I've had diverse roles in science and engineering. But I think the common thread for me has been a desire to learn and experience new things. And so I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. It's a small twin island republic in the Caribbean. And my professional journey actually started off with me teaching physics and math in high school. So I was a high school physics and math teacher for about 4 years. And then I came to the US to study mechanical engineering in Washington, D.C. So I actually started off where I am now in Washington, D.C. So after my bachelor's, I moved on to get a master's because I had that dream of becoming an aerospace engineer. So I said I needed to get my master's in aerospace engineering. And so I did that in California at Stanford. But while there, even though I was focusing on aerospace engineering, my specialty or my deep love really was for materials science and materials engineering. So I did a lot of internships and co-ops and study abroad and extracurricular activities that were really focused around that. After my master's, I entered the real world, as they say, left college, left academia for a little bit, and worked in the field for an oil and gas services company based in Venezuela. So I was out in the field doing exploration for oil and gas, which is kind of related but not related to hydrogen. But while there, I really had this desire, this passion to return to academia and to get my PhD. So I did my PhD at the University of Illinois. My research focus was on multifunctional materials and composite materials. And so you could think of things like structural materials, so they can bear load, but they can also do other things. So I worked on self-sensing and self-healing materials and kind of got some in-depth experience and knowledge in that. After my PhD, I returned to this same oil and gas services company, but now I took on a research role. So I performed research and did research where we were developing degradable composite materials for various applications. So it's still multifunctional materials, still getting my hands into that work of materials research. In 2016, I switched away from industry work and transitioned to a college professor role. So I worked in the Department of Aerospace Engineering at Auburn University in Alabama, where I taught classes on aerospace materials and mechanics of materials, sorry. But my research there was focused on composites, still working on composite materials, but also 3D printing of these multifunctional materials. So I had worked with undergrads and graduate students looking at how we could 3D print materials that had these self-sensing and self-healing and degradable properties. And then I did a lot of outreach as well in the community and on campus. And so all those things are really kind of feeding into the things that I enjoy, right? I enjoy learning, I enjoy teaching. But while I was at Auburn, I started to develop this desire to understand exactly how the process works from a government level, a federal government level, in terms of how research programs are developed, how the funding mechanisms are developed. And so I started looking for ways in which I could leverage the skills and the experience that I had in terms of materials and composites, and seeing how I can use that to kind of get a better understanding of how the federal government works in terms of research programs. And so I started looking for opportunities, and that's where I found the ORISE Fellowship, which allows postgraduate students and early career professionals to be embedded within the federal government and to really learn how things work there from a science, technology, and policy standpoint. And so that's how I got to this point where I am now in my hydrogen journey. The team here at HFTO, they were looking for someone with a composite materials background, particularly for hydrogen storage applications. And so it's a nice match because I get to learn how things work from federal government level, but I also get to leverage the skills and the experience that I have. And so that's it about me. I'm going to be here for the next couple of minutes with everyone else. So I'll be open to answer any questions. So just to give you an idea of the fact that, as you heard from Luisa, our paths to hydrogen are so very different, but they're also very important as well. So I'll pass it back to Thomas. Thanks.
Thank you, Asha-Dee. That was perfect. And finally, we will introduce our final speaker on our panel, Tim Karlsson. Tim is a senior advisor at the International Partnership for Hydrogen in the Economy, IPHE, which is an international intergovernmental partnership between 21 countries across the European Communion, including the European Commission. Tim has previously held positions for the Government of Canada, including the Director of the Emerging Technologies and the Director of Environment and Clean Energy Industries in the Department of Industry of Canada. He also served as a delegate to the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Tim, we're delighted to have you.
Great, thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to you today and engage with the Early Career Network. Maybe I'll start by just flagging that I'm kind of at the tail end of my career, so to speak, and in fact we had many different opportunities, and I think that the hydrogen sector provides a whole swath of opportunities throughout your career. So this will be great. A little bit about me. I started off working in the mining industry, both in Canada and in Australia for a number of years, and then I joined the Government of Canada in the economics department. And there I started off actually as an analyst in the steel sector. And just a complete aside, often steel questions are trade questions and industrial development opportunity, but it's often a trade thing. I then moved on, as Thomas mentioned, to the climate change file, and I was a member of the Canadian delegation for a number of years. My focus was on the market mechanisms, Kyoto mechanisms, they called it in the day, emissions trading mainly, and then compliance systems as well. So I did that for a number of years. Then I moved on and I worked as a senior advisor to the Assistant Deputy Minister in the Industry Ministry. And one of the key things that I learned coming out of that experience was the balance that policymakers and ministers, when you hear a policy decision or a ministerial decision, government decision, they're balancing multiple objectives that they're taking into account all the time. Innovation, jobs, economic growth, sustainability, all these things. They're trying to weigh them and figure out what the best policy is for their particular circumstance. And that was a great insight. Often you wonder why they made this decision. Well, you have to kind of think about it and what were some of the other objectives that were coming. And so that was a great experience. Seeing how those policy decisions were made and contributing to the development of those policy decisions. Then I did move on as Director of Emerging Technologies. And there I was exposed to hydrogen to start with, but also radio frequency ID and biotechnology and industrial applications, and also the health space. And those broadened my understanding of the implications and roles of hydrogen and of other technologies as well. And there, my objective of my team and myself was to develop clusters, and that was the idea. There was to retain IP I come from Canada. There are the clusters in Canada, How do we develop highly qualified personnel? What's the processes and what needs to be done there? Retain and build a research capacity, and then also gain global recognition and engaging through international trade, international engagement. And so that was another part of the role of the group that I was leading and involved in. And then eventually, as I mentioned, hydrogen was part of those emerging technology groups, and I became the delegate from Canada to the IPHE. And so after representing Canada for a number of years, and then I got the opportunity to work at the IPHE Secretariat. And I did that both out of Brussels through the Commission and then back in Canada as well. And so maybe just in closing, a couple of comments about just things that I've seen is that the hydrogen file comes in waves, and it depends on the national circumstances. So in Canada, for example, hydrogen was very popular and was a key point of interest from, if you can, 2003 to about 2012, something like that. It was very important, and there was lots of emphasis on it. And then it kind of waned. And other countries picked up the ball, and it was of a great interest in Europe, Germany, and Japan, and the United States, and others, where it continued to percolate. And now it's come back again. And so, depending on national circumstances and depending on the situation, the theme of hydrogen has come and gone. But now I think the trajectory is definitely on a stable footing and progressing quite rapidly. Although there will be hiccups, and we need to understand that there will be difficult decisions and times ahead, but we get these waves, and then it comes on. The trajectory is in the right direction. And then just a couple of closing things. It's always be curious. Throughout my career, as I've briefly outlined, I did different files, different things, but it's always why. What was behind it? What was the rationale for it? What really were the objectives of the policies or the goals that you wanted to do? Is it business, making profit? Perfect. Is it to research and do that? Perfect. What is the driver behind it? Is it something else? Innovation, jobs, skills, those kinds of things. And then the other is, of course, throughout all the jobs, and I think as you've seen displayed here this morning, communication skills, very important. I think that's another thing, is to be open and accessible and willing to communicate your ideas. I think that is very important. And so with that, I think I'll draw my introductory comments to a close and look forward to the questions and discussion. Thanks very much, Thomas.
Thank you so much, Tim. So next we will move into a Q&A session, bring all of our panelists back onto screen here. So please, everybody who's on the call, feel free to drop questions in the Q&A feature of Teams or in the chat, and we will get those through. I'll pass things to Asha-Dee first. Asha, if you could talk about, for people that may not have any experience in hydrogen, what advice can you give them on how to get started if they're interested in working in this field?
That's a good question. I would say the first thing you have to realize or understand about hydrogen is because it's such a diverse field, right? Like, it's not like hydrogen is one thing and you go and you make hydrogen molecules. There's hydrogen production, but there's also delivery and storage and the end uses. And so I think we can use folks from all different backgrounds to get into the hydrogen economy. So it's not like you need to go and reinvent your career. You can leverage the skills that you have, whether it's in engineering or science, whether it's in economics, whether it's in policy. We need folks from so many different backgrounds to help us push the economy, the hydrogen economy forward. And so in terms of how to enter the industry, I would say to start looking at companies, and whether it's companies or even those of you who are doing like postdocs, look to see if there are professors working in that field. They may be working on hydrogen safety, or they may be working on components for a particular technology. and see how you can leverage the skills that you already have to make your way in. But also be very open to learning new things, right? Because if you're not in the field, you're coming in as a quote unquote newbie, and so you have to be willing to make a few mistakes and a few blubbers, but also to learn new things and to develop in that area.
That's great. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that question you want to chime in on?
Yeah, I would also add to that yeah, like I think the most important thing is just to have interest and to be excited and to be also willing to learn about it on your own. And there are so many open vacancies at the moment, and like even at NOW, we've got people stepping in also from other sectors. So just to bring the willingness and the curiosity and the interest, and then maybe also look at companies or organizations that you get excited about, like the work that they do, and approach someone from them. Just ask them for like a coffee or like a virtual chat. Most people actually enjoy talking about themselves and their own experiences. So, sometimes if you don't get a response straight away, don't be disappointed. People have like lots of their plate. Try again, try other people from that same organizations, and then like slowly learn about what jobs are there. And I guess with every interaction that you have with someone from industry, you will get one step ahead. You can't always see it from like the start, but just keep on engaging with the sector and you'll get there.
Great. Tim, any other thoughts?
No, I would just echo what Luisa said. Everybody likes to talk about the job. They're fan of it. It's great what's going on. Engage them as over coffee. Engage them as information. You're just gathering information. You're not looking for a job necessarily. You're just trying to understand. And that's a great way to enter. And you'll find most people very open and willing to engage with you. So Luisa nailed it right there. Yeah.
Well, that's great. And this is kind of a good question to build off this discussion from the chat. Konstantin Borner asked us, how important is a PhD to be successful in hydrogen? If you have a master's in, say, political science, is it required? Should you go back to school, or what opportunities would be available for somebody with that background?
Well, maybe I can start it off. I have a master's in economics. I don't have a PhD. Obviously, it depends on the space that you're in, and I'm sure Asha-Dee will be able to inform us there, of course. But not a require. I would suggest it's not a requirement. That's for sure, depending on where you want to go. And as Asha-Dee mentioned, there's so many different facets to the hydrogen space that different skill sets, different requirements right across the board. So, a degree often gets you in the door, or it's a requirement because there's so much interest. And so how do they kind of make a criteria for folks to talk to? But it's what you personally bring to the table. All the intangibles that you can bring to the table, very important. So depending on the field that you're in, not necessarily having a doctorate or a PhD is necessary. That would be my take, at least.
Yeah, I guess also entering the workforce, like let's say you go from a master's to a job, which is definitely possible, as you can see with Tim and I and most of my colleagues who don't have a PhD. But it's not a one-way street, right? You can always go back also when you can tell, okay, for where I want to get next after that, I need one. I guess then that's always an option.
Asha-Dee, the resident PhD on our panel, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with both Tim and Luisa, right? It depends on the industry. It depends on what you want to do, right? Because depending on what you like, if you want to be someone that's hands-on doing research, then maybe having a PhD would be the route to go. But it depends on what you want to work on, because some positions don't require the PhD. They just require that you have postgraduate experience in a particular topic. And so I know that's probably not the answer you're looking for, but it's the reality of it. And as Luisa said, like if you start a position and you realize I really wanted to get more in-depth in a particular area, you can always go back. Some companies sometimes pay for you to do graduate work, so it just depends on what you're interested in. And as I guess everyone has said, and Thomas, you know it as well, even within our office, we have folks with master's degrees and we have folks with PhDs, and so it just depends on what it is you want to do, and how deep you want to go into a particular area. And of course, there are so many online courses now anyway. You can do something on Coursera or LinkedIn, and I'm not endorsing any of them, but I'm just saying there's so many other ways as well for you to gain the knowledge that you're looking for. So the sky's the limit. It's up to you in terms of what you want to do. And of course, then you can always have having those conversations and those coffees with people who are in the industry. That gives you a better indication of what it is you need to do, whether you need to get an extra degree. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we can all agree that there's so much happening in hydrogen right now. There is a role for everybody, no matter your skill set or educational background. So next, there was a question about, what conferences do you recommend going to, particularly in the US or abroad, that are good to make connections? And I think also, it'd be good to let the group know, where else do you go to find career connections, both within or without hydrogen, to be able to, make sure you're growing your career and your professional network. And I'll take a moderator's prerogative to say that there is a conference that the Department of Energy is hosting in June, our annual merit review. And if anybody's around, we would love to have you there. It's pretty in the weeds, but if the weeds are your thing, then it is the place to be. And I will drop a link to that in the chat.
Well, maybe I'll say, there, and then the companion piece, and Luisa will know this as well, is of course the Clean Hydrogen Partnership joint undertaking event in the fall. That's and these are kind of two opportunities, both the AMR and the Clean Hydrogen Partnership joint undertaking. Well, Hydrogen Week, I guess. I'm not sure they've changed the title of it of the event now, but it is an opportunity to both understand what projects are being funded and who the researchers are. And there's also lots of policy discussion as well. So that would be at the AMR as well. It's kind of a high level conversations to start with. And then they go into a series of presentations so you can find out what space you're interested in and participate in those areas and start to engage. And the breaks in between and the poster events, etc., are all very important areas to engage people and start that conversation and start to build out your network. So those are kind of two main ones. The other, I guess, from an Asian perspective, I know in Japan, in Tokyo, the Fuel Cell Expo, which was just recently, is another one that is quite important. But given the interest in the file now, there's a lot of them out there. And so, I've just flagged a couple that are kind of traditional, but I think there are a lot of other opportunities as well. I know in India, there's a number of projects and conferences underway as well. So, but those just a few where you can get both a policy and high level conversation. And also, if you're interested in specific projects and developments, there's also those tracks as well. So those are a couple of examples.
Yeah, there's so many events and conferences actually, especially in the last couple of years. It's hard to stay on top because there's so much happening, but it also means you basically have the luxury to just see what happens close to your area. Sometimes it's not titled as hydrogen. Sometimes it's like a renewable energy related conference, or like the Hannover Trade Fair, Hannover Messe, they would have like a big section on hydrogen and fuel cells as well. Obviously, some of them you have to pay for, so you probably want to start with something that's for free. But yeah, there's a lot happening, and NOW is also actually hosting once a year in summer the German National Hydrogen Assembly. There we take a bit more transport mobility focus, but yeah, please feel free to meet us there. And yeah, there's lots.
And Luisa, I know you mentioned that there are some like professional networks you are a part of as well. Can you describe some of those and talk about how to get involved?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Thomas. So one of the networks that I'm part of are the Women in Green Hydrogen. So this is like a global network. And yeah, you can actually find them on LinkedIn and get all the information. They also have a website, and they've got a database of all the members, and like a profile, what countries they are from, what areas they work in, and they also run a mentoring program once a year. So for young career professionals who are kind of just entering the field or are in the first couple of years, they can apply for a mentor. I'm actually part of that program at the moment. It's fantastic. So my mentor is located in Israel, and she's got a science background, and that's just like extremely valuable for me to work with her. And the Women in Green Hydrogen also run loads of events, like basically on a monthly basis in all areas around the world. So I really encourage you, like both men and women, to follow them, get connected. Great network.
That's great. We had a few other questions come in the chat about people's specific backgrounds. So one person who has a mix of law and policy, what advice would you give to them to leverage career opportunities? And somebody else who has a master's student in international relations and diplomacy. So two pretty different backgrounds there. But what advice would you give to both of these folks?
Well, Luisa is probably the best one I'd say to answer that one somehow, given your trajectory.
Yeah, I'm just trying to say something new to what I already touched upon in my pitch. So yeah, if you're interested in working in hydrogen, then I don't know where you are in your studies, if you can still choose courses, but choose courses around energy, climate policy, international collaboration. Like they are all applicable insights and knowledge that you can then bring to the sector. And obviously, educate yourself through podcasts and like reading industry blogs and articles to get your build your understanding of the industry. You don't need to like have an engineering background, just like be interested and thirsty to learn about it. And then I mean, for example, at NOW, we've got an international team, as I mentioned, and we've actually got one role open at the moment, focusing on Europe, and we'll have another role opening up around Easter. That's international program manager, also focusing on countries outside of Europe. So no need to bring an engineering or I would say technical background on hydrogen. I hold a master's in international relations. So please keep your eyes peeled on our website, and that's about it.
I don't know if Asha-Dee has what I would highlight is that in the conversations that we have at the IPHE, it's clear, and I mentioned it again in my opening comments, about unique national circumstances. And someone who can bring insights into the drivers that are in Korea or in India or elsewhere to a file in your own jurisdiction and helping to reach out and make it work is very important. Often we think, for many years in Canada, for example, we found, it was innovation, it was economic opportunity, it was jobs. Whereas in other jurisdictions, it was climate change was the key driver, or energy security was the key driver. And so when you had conversations with others, we kind of, maybe we missed it. And we, someone who's making those connections and being able to draw that to the fore, I think would be very helpful. And then on the legal side, there's going to be I don't know if these GPT things are going to take over, but legal questions, trade questions, those are all going to become very prevalent in the next few years. It's going to be around IP, but also about trade rights and obligations and relationships. So I would think those are, it's law applied to a sector. Hydrogen's a sector. It could be anywhere, but I think those are real opportunities there as well.
So a question for everyone on the panel that I'm personally curious about: if you were able to start your career today and have the rest of your life to work on hydrogen, what path would you take? What technology or issue would you focus on? What is really exciting for you right now that you would love to spend a career working on?
Very good question. I actually don't think I would do anything differently. I'd probably make my path a little bit more linear, and go directly towards clean energy and hydrogen, because I like what I do. I enjoy what I do in terms of materials research, and so being able to apply that, I think, for me has been very valuable. What I probably would do is take a few more courses focused on like the economics, because it's the technology is all well and good, but I think understanding the economics and understanding policy and the politics and everything would help. But yeah, that's me in a little nutshell.
That's great. Tim, do you have thoughts on that?
Not really, in that you bring all your experiences to the table, and so having a broad set of experiences is always helpful. Just as a complete aside, but anyway, I mean, working in the mining industry in both Canada and Australia gives you a completely different perspective on what's going on from a government perspective. And so, you understand what the other drivers are and things like that. So, having a breadth of experience as you go forward, maybe you have a goal in mind, but the trick, as I said at the beginning, is, and others have mentioned, is, being curious, asking why did they take that route? Why did they think that way? And understanding, or trying to understand what the others are trying to achieve, or their perspectives, and it's all very important. And maybe it will be a little bit circuitous, but that's the way life is. And the scope that the hydrogen sector has, from technical, as we talked about, to trade, economic innovation, government policy, legal, that it's right across the board. So you can find many careers within the sector, and just being curious will lead you where you want to go.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm actually still quite at the start of my career, so I've been listening to Tim and Asha-Dee now, and like taking notes to apply your learnings. But like what I can say already, like one learning, I love the point that Tim touched upon earlier regarding international relations. And so we see with the current energy crisis in Europe that there are aspects like geopolitics that are a reality. So not underestimating all the knowledge that you already bring also in that sector, and yeah, just being confident about the skills that you already have and the knowledge, and not thinking you have to do like 5 more, maybe even unpaid internships or something, but like just always aim high and be brave. And yeah, we really need you in the field, and you're ready now, and you already bring so much, and then the rest you will learn doing your jobs. So just being confident and not underestimating your skills and your value that you already bring to an organization.
I definitely agree with that, Luisa. I was just thinking back 3.5 years ago, when I was deciding whether to move from academia into the fellowship, and I had a little discussion with one of my PhD advisors, telling her like what my desires were. Like I wanted to kind of take a step away from what I was doing, but in my mind, I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll do it in a year or two. Like I'll follow the prescribed trajectory. And she said to me, she's like, well, if you want to do it, why don't you just do it now? I'm like, oh, why won't I just do it now? Right. And so that's very good advice. If there's something that you're interested in doing, just take that first step, get the info that you need, and run with it. Yeah.
That's great. And in terms of being able to foster connections, after this webinar concludes, can people connect with you on LinkedIn? And I know Asha-Dee and Luisa, you mentioned open positions, but what opportunities do you have either where you work or within your network that you would recommend people check out?
I guess the first answer to the first question is yes, you can connect with me. And I've found, even when I started in hydrogen, just connecting with one or two people within the field, it just opens up a much larger network, right? And I guess that's how networking works. But when you connect with folks on these different platforms and you can comment and you engage in conversations, I think it helps you, one, to figure out where the opportunities are, but it also allows you to connect with other folks and let you know different things that you can be working on. In terms of opportunities, I know that within our office, we do have openings for ORISE fellowships for those of you who are based in the US. So trying to remember the website. I think Christine may have put it in the chat earlier. So it's usually go to Z Intellect and you type in. And what's nice about that website is I know we're focused on hydrogen, but it gives you a list of all the different opportunities within the Department of Energy where you can come on board. And then there are also, if you're not really leaning towards like the federal government and the policy, usually the national labs in the US and the research institutes in other countries tend to have openings in different areas. So if you want to go to those websites and look for like postdoctoral positions, I know some of us may be beyond the postdoctoral point, but we might be early career professionals, and there are usually openings there where you can search or you can express interest, and then they'll send you emails when openings turn up.
That's great. I saw Luisa. Yep.
Yeah, I just posted the link to our website. There are a couple of openings in my team, international, but also openings in the other teams. And yeah, they are like, we grow very fast at the moment at NOW. Like 3 years ago, I think we were at around 60 people. Now we are at 200. So you can really see there's money going into that field. We've got like new research institutes specifically focusing on hydrogen opening in Germany. We've got the ministries, research institutes, obviously depends on where you see yourself. But yeah, just check out websites of institutions and companies that you're interested in, and there's lots of openings.
And even at the IPHE now, we have a new IPHE fellow position that will be opening now. The previous one, who I think many of you know, Ted, is moving on. So we'll have there's a new opportunity for a fellow position at the IPHE Secretariat to help engage with the executive director and deal and outreach to the various delegates of the IPHE and focus much effort on social media and things like that. So you can ping the secretariat at iphe.net if you're interested for more information.
Those all sound like incredible opportunities. Thank you for sharing. We'll reserve a few minutes at the end to talk about how people can get involved in the Early Career Network in IPHE and continue being a part of these conversations and fostering all these connections across the world. But I'll turn it back to the panelists for closing thoughts. Any last pieces of advice you want to leave with the audience? Tim, let's start with you.
Well, I think we've covered it very well. As I say, stay curious. We start our life asking why, and I think that's a key thing that you need to continue to do throughout your career. And communication skills also very important, and engaging people there. I think as you know, it's it's very important, not just for a job, but also for future and understanding. You coffees and things, that's a very important linkage. So curious and engaging, please.
Thanks. Asha-Dee?
Yes, my two words would be bold and persistent. Yep.
That's
there are
wonderful.
a lot of, yeah. I wouldn't expand too much, but it does require some persistence. So don't be afraid to keep asking and keep sending messages, and yeah.
Yeah, nothing other to add to that. You're already part of the hydrogen community by being part of this event. Yeah, connect, reach out, stay curious, and yeah, reach high. And yeah, we're looking forward to meeting some of you in person. And yeah, feel free to connect. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you again to all of our panelists. And Sunita wanted to say it in her remarks before she lost internet connection, unfortunately. But a special thank you to Now and Luisa in particular for helping to organize and bring this webinar together. If people want to give a little clap emoji in the chat here, that'd be wonderful. We really, really appreciate it, and we hope this is the start of a very long collaboration with your organization. Next, I'll turn it over to Suki, my fellow co-chair of the Early Career Network for IPHE, who will give a little bit of a promo and background on who we are.
Thanks, Thomas. So could you share the yeah. So before we finish today's webinar, I'd like to introduce about our Early Career Network with IPHE. Hello, I'm Sugyong Kang, another co-chair of IPHE Early Career Network as an energy analyst in hydrogen, having background studies in chemical engineering, energy and environment, material science, and policies and economics of international energies. I have some studies, projects in hydrogen mobility for heavy-duty vehicles and HFTO industry, and select hydrogen production by water electrolyzer. And we are young experts or students who work or are interested in hydrogen and fuel cell technology development, and aim to help accelerate the transition to clean and efficient energy and transportation, mobility, and industry. So this Early Career Network contributed to networking, career and leadership development on hydrogen fuel cell research, policy, science, and having conferences and events. So more than 250 members from 37 different countries are involved in this network, including the following leadership team members. We have different expertise aspects of hydrogen, logistics, technology and policy, also strategic development and policy making for future needs, clean and affordable hydrogen production, fuel cell vehicle applications, solid oxide fuel cell research, and governance, etc. So next slide, please. So the idea to explain why we've done and present a quick plan for the year 2023 on this slide. First, we launched this network in October 2020. Previously, we organized regular events and webinars such as research and policy on hydrogen safety, fuel cell research, and high temperature electrolyzers, hydrogen production, and U.S. Hydrogen policy. Also, social impacts of green hydrogen projects with insights from renewable energy projects. So currently, including this webinar, we are planning many events and webinars to share information about hydrogen and fuel cell technology research, as well as environmental economical and political aspects. At the same time, we are promoting our membership campaign to increase the networking, organize more various collaborative events through joining our Oli Collier network. You can participate in our communication team, sharing international news with external bodies and social media. Events management team to reach out to potential speaker, networking and sponsor team, having some job opportunities related to hydrogen, and education and outreach team engaging with some universities. So it will be a great opportunity to promote international hydrogen fuel cell awareness and connect members with peers, mentors, and potential employers, and launch a collaborative platform for the next generation of hydrogen fuel cell scientific researchers, industry experts, and government leaders. So you can join us through the link below with filling some simple format. There's a link below. So if you have any question, you can also send an email through the link or through the email oli.career@iphe.net.com. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Suki. That was wonderful. I will drop the links in the chat.